Welcome back to the late day wrap up. Wish you a happy and healthy start to your, end to your, I guess, Friday. It's a nice end to this week of so much of which has happened. So with that said, as always, if you want the more in-depth, more detailed analysis, definitely check out this morning's video. That's going to be about 40 minutes of just straight Bitcoin spewing out of my mouth hole. But right now, we'll be going and blowing through all of the major pairings. Starting with DXY, of course, to get kind of the big bias on all of the, everything that trades against US dollar. So with that in mind, I do want to start off with the monthly today because the monthly is looking like a massive rejection thus far. As long as it's living below the 200 exponential average, I do look at that as a bit of pressure down on the long term. But of course, when we go back down to the, Jesus fucking Christ. Oh, man, that was loud. Scared the shit out of me right there. By the way, enjoy the sweet sounds of Valheim in the background, lulling you off to sleep, of which you should certainly not be sleeping right now. Anyways, looking back on DXY on the weekly, we are still caught within the same range that we've been looking at for like the last 2+ months now, of which anything within this range doesn't mean much for myself, but the bias is that as long as this range does hold from top side about $91 and to the bottom side of about 89.75, I look at this as more or less just a long-term base area, likely to produce a long-term reversal with targets back up to about 92.5 to 92.25-ish region, which would be initiated by closing a weekly back above about $91 even. So with all of that in mind, as long as it's up within this region, nothing too crazy to be spoken about there. I don't really have any even short-term, medium-term biases here, although short-term would be, if I'm looking at DXY, I'd be short-term bias to the downside. But more importantly, if I'm looking for a downside move on the short-term for DXY, I don't really look to that. I don't really look for that to play into the other major pairings that we typically do look at. The reason why I say that, or the reason why I want to kind of focus on that for a second here, is because a lot of the time people will be like looking at fucking DXY and being like, oh my god, hourly lower high, we're going to the fucking moon right now, or vice versa, or just any time frame that's even below a daily. I just don't think that it's very much relevant. And while yes, of course, they do have a relationship to each other, you really want to be looking at this on the daily and nothing less, in my experience. Otherwise, it's very minute and very minutia-ish, to use a bad alliteration right there. Meaning. Anyways, with that said, yes, short term, we do have a lower high in place. Yes, I would be looking for this one to probably trade back down towards that $90 space. Same thing as before, though. I would be looking for a bounce off that region and for the range to hold coming into next week. So nothing really new to talk about there. More or less, it's, steady as she goes. Again, as long as we do not break below 89.75, which does not look like it's going to happen today, in fact. Of course, crazy things happen, but I don't think it's going to happen today. Anyways, going over here to our regular charts, let's go check out NASDAQ first. NASDAQ playing out a little bit of that short-term move to the upside that we spoke about on this morning's video, playing out that hidden bullish divergence that was not present on NASDAQ. Actually, NASDAQ had regular bullish divergence here. It was SPY futures that had, I believe, hidden bullish divergence possible, and we did just about graze the target of that one. I was saying about 39.30. We got up to 39.31, actually, so, or it would technically be about 39.33.5. 39.31 is where we got up to. So overall, I would be looking for this one to likely level out a little bit more here. This is a good response off this level, of course, that we were looking at on this morning's video. So I would be looking at this as still likely to kind of trade its way sideways. And with that in mind, I don't really have any medium or higher term time frame bias here until I see the weekly closure. Technically speaking, this is, or if it were to close exactly like this on today's closure in 7 hours, this would be your spinning top, of course. And that could be a potential reversal sign, but the only way to confirm it as reversal is coming back down below the low of this week, which is 38.80.5. So you can see that like a lot of work has to be done. And as it stands right now, I'm not really getting anything too obvious on either side, so I still think that a healthy amount of I don't know is the proper response, at least from my end on this one, and same thing on NASDAQ as well, because we did get the short-term time frame move, but I'm not really getting much on top of that. NASDAQ got up to what on that move? Yeah, 13.7. I said 13.750 this morning. We got up to 13.729. I'd say that was the move right there. If you're still looking for that to play out, I don't think that has further to go on that one. So realistically, I would kind of back away from saying anything other than that. That's pretty much all that I could find from this morning's video, and then I just want to see the weekly closures, and then we can maybe come up with some more biases coming in next week. I know that's not very helpful, but at the end of the day, it's like I'm not gonna talk about something that I don't fucking see there, of course. Anyways, moving on to gold, we are still hanging on the lows of this one. This one's starting to look a lot more nasty here. While it is playing out a bit of a short-term bounce, I am not so much of a fan of this bounce thus far. Again, I have to kind of remain with what I've been saying. While I wouldn't necessarily take the trade myself, it technically should be considered bearish as long as we are living below this 1850-ish pivot right here. And technically speaking, I should be bearish as long as that condition is not met. We do have dual sell signals on the weekly which is rather powerful, going back in middle to late of January. And seeing as a 55 is a little bit in jeopardy right here, I suppose I could use this as a management for the next leg down, meaning that if gold does close below this level, which is 1780-ish region, we'll call it, then it would be looking for next week to pop back down somewhere around just below 1700 bucks, somewhere between about 1700 and 1680-ish regions where I'd be looking towards, and then probably bounce implied right there. But for now, again, like I said, I wouldn't really take this trade here. I do feel a bit apprehensive about talking about further downside on this one, but then I look at the monthly and looks like I want some more downside, actually. Come to think of it, yeah, monthly RSI kind of tells the story right here. Kicked out of the bullish control zone, a little bit of a head and shoulders there as well, so probably does gun for the 21, and guess where that is? Right below 1700 bucks. So I guess if I did have to have a bias here, yeah, I would still be bearish and still be looking to the downside. But you know, any sort of a move back above 1850 on a weekly closure, that would switch me around to bullish. So that is my criteria for that. So fair enough. Fair enough. Anyways, moving on into, is it Bitcoin time? Let's actually look at Eurodollar really quickly. I do think that this one's rather interesting right now. This one's popping back up here. I think that this is very, very obviously now a reaccumulation off the 21 exponential average. So I would be looking for this one to probably pop back up into next week about 122.5 region. Let's look at the daily as well. Yeah, daily's actually looking pretty good here for a short-term, medium-term move back up to about 121.80-ish region. In the 4 hour, I imagine it's more or less the same. Actually, no. 4 hour, if anything, has potential hidden bearish divergence if this confirms a local high right here, but that has not been happening just yet. Closure below about 121 region especially would confirm that, but looking at the daily, looking at the weekly, this one actually does look like it pulls through over time and does take another stab back up around that prior high coming in the next couple weeks here. And actually, let's check out the monthly as well. Monthly is not giving me much. I mean, we technically still do have lower highs in the monthly here too. This one's going to be a difficult one coming into the monthly closure, actually. I have to take this one week by week, I suppose, but we actually are coming into the monthly closure, not this week, obviously, but pretty much next week. Yeah, that's going to be the last trading day of the month, Friday. Of course, Monday is going to be the actual next month, so 2 Mondays from now. Anyways, with that in mind, I would be looking, I will hold off on saying for something on the monthly for now, but as far as the weekly goes and the daily goes, yeah, I do look for this to carry up a little bit more towards just north of 122-ish region. Anyways, moving on to, is it Bitcoin time? I think it is Bitcoin time, actually. Bitcoin, new all-time motherfucking highs, $53,000 and 342 and a 50 cents on top of that for BitMexico. And what do we see as far as momentum oscillators go? Well, plenty of things on the lower term time frames. We did identify hidden bullish divergence, not on spot price action. We did identify it on CME this morning, which was coming off this area right here, confirmed a little bit later right after the video. And well, there you go, new all-time highs on top of that, as we said. However, as we predicted, sorry to use the right terminology there. However, remember, this is coming into the next sort of algo target from this region based off the 2-spot 414, I believe it was, or was it 272? No, the 272 right here, which is right around 54,000 bucks, also in line with the pattern target from this as an ascending triangle. So both of those confluent with each other. I would be looking for a short-term pullback from that region. However, short-term is only relevant for the short term. Ultimately, I'd look for a range to kind of extrapolate from the 272 and the 414 and kind of base there before a further move up to the 618, which is a lot more likely here at about 58,000 bucks overall. But as far as the short-term timeframes go, that's all I'd say about that. Of course, we do have a weekend coming up, well, after today, essentially. So while I would essentially be having a bullish bias into next week towards that $58,000 region, I wouldn't stand by that over the weekend. Over the weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a little bit of floaty price action. Now, here's the one thing that I really want to see on closure today that would further enhance my bias coming into next week, and that would be this: the weekly for CME, which again is closing today. Sorry, I'm on the wrong shot right here. The weekly on CME closing today. If that does close above the topside Toronto band, once again, I would look for this to essentially continue to make new all-time highs coming in this next week. Specific interest on the $58,000-ish region. and a potential move to even to $62,000 region, because we are in a more aggressive and violent market, which typically does happen. You do see like wicks up to the 3 spot in this case, so that'd be about $62,000, and then a range play out between 58 and 62 before the next sort of big, major direction is chosen. So I'd essentially be looking for a range of consolidation to come about after that. But for right now, all time frames are essentially bullish right now. There's nothing bearish about making new all-time highs, of course, and we are even going to see the SMI turn back up once again on the next tick, as long as it closes above 52,931, which is rather nice here. Yes, things are very much cooked. Yes, things are very much crazy. But keep in mind, we haven't even seen the expansive phase from the HVP down here. It's still kind of caught in the single digits on the 4-hour, on the 3-hour, on the bi-hourly, and on the hourly. You can see that they're starting to expand on the bi-hourly and hourly, but 3 and 4 are still kind of dead there in the single digits. So that does suggest that the move coming out of this space has still yet to happen, which is what I've been saying for a while now. So I wouldn't be surprised if we actually, I wouldn't actually be surprised if we do see that move to the upside over the weekend, but certainly coming into next, or I shouldn't say certainly, but very likely coming into next week. Again, assuming that the weekly condition is met for CME, I would be looking for about $58,000 and probably more over time until those really start to expand to a critical area in which I'd be looking for the next medium-term pullback at the very least, maybe even long-term pullback. That's also going to play into the it would play into the open interest, but more importantly, the interest rate as well, the funny rates for all those long positions that are paying quite exorbitant fees right now, which only have been kind of rising up over time. So with all of that in mind, I suppose I do remain bullish on just about everything Bitcoin and crypto related. Of course, if things do break down, should have areas of interest as well, pivot points that denote failure. Short-term area would be 51,100 right here on a 2-hour or 4-hour total closure. Any sort of a closure below there would start to inspire a medium-term time frame move, suggesting another about $3,000 move to the downside, about $48,000 right here. That breaking, would be I was referring to this as a short-term move this morning. Now I have to put it into a medium-term. I wouldn't necessarily say that below this region would be a long-term move, but below $48,000, I would look for another $4,000 move to the downside, about $44,000. That's at the point where the long term does start to come into contact, and if that does break, I would start to switch to long term bearish, looking for at the very least to move down to about $39,000 to $40,000. And then I want to see that one after that in order to get a little bit further ahead of myself. So again, am I looking for that to happen at all? No, not really, but I do think that's important to kind of set conditions for what would denote if that plan is not going to go properly. As everything states right now, we have pattern targets, we have momentum, we have a trend, and we have formations, all kind of pointing in the same direction right now. So I would remain more or less, I suppose, bullish on Bitcoin. This is, of course, not a financial advisor. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm the furthest thing from it. I'm a financial derper over here. But with that said, I would like to wish you the best. Have a nice weekend. Until next time.